What makes a motorcycle a perfect racing machine? Especially in a sport where bike failure can leave you stranded hundreds of kilometers away from home, how can you create a bike that's both competitively and technologically advanced, but at the same time that you can rely on, that it's not going to let you down and leave you stranded in the middle of nowhere?
In my early days of lusting after a motorcycle, I could hardly make the difference between a fatty dual sport and the racing machine. I mean, if you think about it, they both have wide bars, big suspension, big tires. Similar, yes. Extremely different at the same time? Also yes. Then, what makes this KTM a racing machine?
The answer lies in two simple movements, two strokes: compression and combustion. Discuss the time an engine needs to make power in half, while also reducing the complexity and the weight of the engine itself.
This engine configuration used to be a dying breed, especially after accountants forced the motocross world to give up on smokers and switch over to four-bangers. Luckily, off-road dirt bikes had another savior, one with flaming orange colors and with a name that got to be a synonym with racing and madness. And that is KTM. Take any extreme enduro event in the last 10 years, take any winner of any of those events and see what bike they ride. Either a 300 or a 250 two-stroke.
Take my bike, a 2016 KTM 300 EXC. In its days it won contests like Red Bull Sea2 Sky, Hispania, Megawatt, at the helm of amazing riders like Lars Enokel, Johnny Walker or even Alfredo Gomez.
Now, of course, I'm neither one of those guys. In my wildest dreams, I could only hope to do like half of what they're capable to one day, and even that might be a really good f***ing day. But still, even if you look at a lot of competitions and what people ride, and Gumbies like me ride, you'll still see a lot of 300 two-strokes, and I mean, a lot.
First things first, this engine is impossible to kill. I can lug it at RPMs that shouldn't be possible without stalling, and this bike will keep on tractoring up any hill. Some of us might be used with the old days, where smokers were only good in their high RPM power band, but these days, these extreme machines have insane low down performance.
We're used to compromises. We buy a bigger McDonald's menu but then get the Diet Coke in order not to get too fat too quickly. So it might seem reasonable to assume that KTM had to compromise on its low-end performance in order to get that top-end power.
Well, when you give it a bit of gas, the power band is still there. Woo! It's not tame! It's not tame! The power band is there, and it hits you hard, and when it does, you'd better hold on to your dear life. This is not a slow machine. For anyone who's ever driven dirt bikes, this is not a slow machine.
Really, nobody needs this sort of power if you're not Graham Jarvis, but come on, it's so much fun.
It's not just outright power that defines these engines though, it's their zippiness. Give the grip a slight twist and you're all over the revs, and that allows for quick and precise maneuvers that also have to include the clutch. The hydraulic unit is not the only thing that's feather light. The bike itself sits closer to a ballerina than a typical McDonald's enthusiast. Sure, the scale shows a really promising value, but since the engine has less moving parts as well, it feels even lighter than usual. And while that might translate to a little less stability out in the open, it means that here, in its tight natural habitat,
it flows so nicely through the woods. I mean, if you think about it, it kind of reminds you of a Fatty Trials bike, and that's amazing. From a bike like this to be this like agile and easy to throw around, it's honestly pretty amazing, and it makes the bike handle beautifully in the woods. Beautifully!
What KTM didn't do though was compromise on this machine's capability of taking in abuse. When you drop it, no worries. You throw it from a rock, again, no worries. This bike will start up even after being dropped in a river and flooded.
Now sure, this model year might have had some starter motor issues, but it's really a non-essential since you have the Kickstarter. If you keep up on the maintenance, the bike will be tough as a rock.
This mentality also translates to its tires. Now sure, you can change them at will, but most professional riders will run a system called a tire mousse. Basically, if your standard dirt bike tire has an air chamber inside of it, this one doesn't. This one has basically a big foamy tube, which makes flats impossible. Sure, they're a bit of a pain in the ass to maintain, and you have to change them almost as often as you change the tires. But out in the wilderness, this is one less thing you ever have to worry about.
Of course, all this toughness and performance have to have a dark side, and that's maintenance. You need to change the piston about every 100 hours, the gearbox oil every 10 to 15 hours. On older models you had to mix gas and oil, the tire mousses have to be changed every time you change the tires, and many more jobs to keep it up in perfect running order. It's not cheap and also not convenient, but at the end of the day, we're talking about a dedicated racing machine, one that's sole purpose is to take you into the extreme wilderness, and in places you might not even be able to climb on foot. Is it worth it? Well, yes, if you can afford it.
Yes, baby, I'm top. But now, woo! This is my first ever dirt bike. I mean, sure, I've had 3 street bikes before, but this is my first like proper off-road machine. And was it a good beginner bike? And is it a good beginner bike? No. I mean, it does have some redeeming bits, like the torque, but as a beginner, sometimes that's not even good for you. But no, it's not a good beginner bike. Do I regret it though? Absolutely not. Not a single cent of it.
Sometimes in life we make things that aren't the most logical. They don't make that much sense. I mean, sure, I could have bought a less powerful bike, a smaller one, and yes, I would have probably learned much quicker on it, but I wanted this one in particular because, you know what? I'll learn how to handle the power. I'll learn how to handle its weight, power, and whatever. Because at the end of the day, this is the bike and the sport that got me into riding. This is what made me want my first ever motorcycle. And you know what? They say you should never meet your heroes, but in this case, I did. And it far exceeded my wildest expectations.